G'day folks, my name's Shane. Welcome to the In the Blues Tone podcast. It's now the 19th of February 2018. I actually had to record this again because I said 17. I can't believe it. I'm still saying 17 for whatever reason. So it's 2018, second month of the year already. We've got some cool stuff to cover on this particular podcast, and I'm going to be uploading, as you can tell, the full video now to YouTube with each different segment. If you want to skip ahead to any particular part, you can just check the description. I've got time codes there and it will take you through to each separate part. I may still chop up some sections of this. I'm sure there's a couple of sections that people won't see unless I post it in its short clip as well. So we'll see about that coming up. And if you don't have iTunes and you aren't subscribed to the podcast through iTunes, you can go to inthebluespodcast.com and listen for free from there as well in audio form. So plenty of options. The really cool thing about YouTube is videos like this, you can just sort of hit play and go do other stuff in the house. That's kind of what I do when I listen to podcasts myself. So anyway, I hope you enjoy it. Now, I wanted to say a huge thank you to all the new subscribers who have joined the channel over the last month or so. We've had, it wasn't long ago that I hit 80,000 and we're almost up to 82,000 already. So thanks so much for hanging around and joining up and leaving your comments and questions and all that kind of stuff. Actually sort of getting back to everybody now is getting really, really tough, but I'm still trying. So any new video you see me post, if you have a specific question about something, post on there. I'm more likely to see it than a video that's, say, 5 years old or something like that. So I maintain all of my new video comments for at least a week, or I try to. Sometimes it's just impossible to, but anyway, I try my best. So what I just wanted to do firstly is just have a quick chat about the new video format and all the feedback I've got on it. So thank you so much to everyone who's commented and said the videos look way better. The new format's great, where you play rhythm guitar and lead guitar on something, just to show you, two different things with two different guitars right at the start of the video, or three different guitars like the Blues Junior video. So I'm trying to mix things up, trying to make the videos a little bit more engaging, I guess, as well. So one of the things I didn't think about when I recorded a lot of backing tracks was I recorded them with guitar parts, which I probably shouldn't have done, but live and learn, I guess. So a lot of the new backing tracks are just drum and bass, and then I'll play my rhythm guitar, and then I'll play lead guitar over that. I have a pretty cool video coming up, which should be up in the next week or so, of the new Boss Katana artist amplifier, which we'll talk about in a moment as well. And that is an absolutely beautiful amp, and it sounds unreal. And I think the video kind of, takes that format that I'm working on to kind of the next level in some ways as well. So I really like it. I think it sounds great. But yeah, thank you everybody for all the feedback on the videos. And if there's any way I can kind of improve the format I've got with some constructive feedback, I'm always open to that as well. So yeah, I plan on sort of taking my production to the next level. I think these video cameras have helped. The lenses, all that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty much done now in terms of gear for the channel. I'm not going to be investing in any more cameras. I've got enough cameras, enough lenses, all that kind of stuff to get just about everything done and to try to make it look better than it's ever looked before. And that's the goal. It's always the goal. Everything I do, I try to improve over time. Except for my singing. Geez, my singing kind of sucks sometimes. I don't do it enough anymore, so that's part of the problem. Alright, so let's get into it. So the second thing I guess on the list now is the Peavey Studio Pro. Now, over the last couple of weeks, we've taken Studio Pros out to gigs, and they've been awesome. Like low volume gigs where you're not miking up or anything like that, they've been unreal. And the cool thing about it is one of the venues we play at has a really small stage. There's tables and chairs right out in front of the stage as well. So we're kind of angling those amps up at ourselves and just having them on tour and using our pedal boards, and they sound great. Now, this might not be, uncommon knowledge or whatever, but they're not as loud as the Peavey Bandits. The Peavey Bandits is just way louder amplifiers. They sound bigger and all that kind of stuff. A friend of mine bought the Silver Stripe Peavey Studio Pro off me recently. I bought it secondhand for $100, and he wanted it, so I sold it to him for $100. And man, he changed the speaker in that thing, and it is so good. It is so good. I'll overlay some clips of how that sounds as well. Just a quick 30-second thing on this video so you can get a sense of what kind of tones you can expect from just changing the speaker. I was absolutely blown away by the tone of this $100 amp with a different speaker. It's some sort of Eminence speaker. I can't quite remember, but I'll work out what it is. It was out of another amp that he had anyway. It wasn't a name brand one like a Swamp Thing or anything. It was some other Eminence. But it absolutely just blew everybody away. There were much more expensive amps in the room, like my old Super Reverb, my Peavey Bandit, and this thing just sounded fantastic. So if you can get your hands on a Silver Stripe Studio Pro, and if you want to gig with it, but you think, the stock speaker's not too loud, it's got one of those Black Marvel speakers, change the speaker to anything else that's more efficient, obviously. Wow. It's like, even on the clean tone, he had it wound up to about 8 out of 10, so it was up really loud, and it sounded really loud. It was maybe a little bit too loud for the room, even though, it's a loud room. You can kind of crank up your amps. As soon as he hit on his dual fusion Wampler pedal, wow, the thing just took off. It was unbelievable. It was great even before the pedal went on, which is the amazing part. So, Studio Pros are underrated amps when it comes to power. I think what holds them back is their speaker. So if you're thinking about getting a Studio Pro 112 secondhand or something like that, and you're like, I don't know if this is loud enough to gig with, change the speaker out. I'm definitely going to be I'm going to try my Texas Heat speaker in my Studio Pro, which has been living in my Bandit for ages. The reason I want to do that is the Bandits aren't light, right? A lot of people think Peavey Bandits being a solid state amp or a trans tube amp are going to be a whole lot lighter than, say, a Blues Deluxe, but they're not. They're pretty comparable weight-wise, so they do weigh quite a lot. The other night I had to walk quite a ways with my amp in my hand because basically where we were walking, I couldn't use my trolley. It was all dirt and gravel and stuff. So I thought to myself, man, I'm really looking forward to putting a different speaker in the Studio Pro 112. And just because that amp is easily it almost feels like half as light as the Bandit for whatever reason. It's much, much smaller physically. It's a bit bigger than a Blues Junior. But yeah, change that speaker out and good Lord, it sounds good. So that's going to be something that I try and test live as well coming up. And I'll definitely be filming some of that coming up. So yeah. Speaker just made a massive difference to the Studio Pro. Studio Pro is arguably one of the best tones I've ever heard live as well, which was just sort of, I don't know, it just made me shake my head. I've been testing some pretty expensive amps and all that lately, and for $100, how can you go wrong? So yeah, we were all pretty much blown away by that, and it just inspired me to get my Studio Pro out and change the speaker and take it out to louder gigs. Now, the reason I bought my Studio Pro, the Red Stripe one, initially was for lower volume gigs, but it still sounds good at a low volume, that amp, with a different speaker. That's the cool thing about it. Whereas the Bandit sounds better once you kind of turn it up a bit. And I'm really looking forward to sort of seeing if there's much of a difference, say, between the 65 watts of the Studio Pro or the 60 watts or whatever it is versus the 80 watts of the Bandit. Now, the Bandits can go up to 100 watts if you daisy chain an external speaker to it, but just in reference to both single 12s, it's pretty much, I don't think there's going to be that much audible difference between them, given if I use the same speaker in both. With the stock speaker in both, there's quite a huge difference in volume. So I love those amps. I really enjoyed using it the other night, and I found myself not really fiddling with the controls the entire gig. I just simply plugged in and I was good to go. So that's another cool thing about them. Alright, so you might remember, you probably do remember, I had a chance to test the John Mayer amp from PRS, the J-Mod 100. And that particular amp retails for about $13,500 in Australia. $13,000. So they're about 10 grand in the US or something like that once you get, or 7 grand or something, but once you get the speaker box, the matching speaker box, that's like another 1100 US. So, it all adds up. So I'm going to say rough ballpark figure between Canada, the US and Australia, you're looking at about $9,000 to $11,000, somewhere around that bracket. It could be a little less here and there, but generally that's what you're going to pay. They're not cheap. I didn't put any of my thoughts and criticisms about the amplifier in the video. We wanted the amp to sort of speak for itself and let people decide what they thought of it. I know I was going to get a lot of comments saying, it's too expensive, right? That's one of those things, and that's subjective too, because everyone's different financially as well. For me personally, I would never spend 13 grand. To me, that's a lot of money. So there's just not a chance I would go do that. But there's people out there that spend 13 grand and not even think about it. So, all right. So Rick and Ryan were in that video and they played great, man. Like, it was just awesome sitting behind the camera and just filming them and having my setup there and all that kind of stuff. I couldn't film that at home because the amp is way too loud. Brings me to some of the pros and cons of that amp. So some of the cons of that amp is you have to turn it up before it even sounds any good. So you have to have a 100 watt amp pretty much almost wide open. It didn't sound good at all at lower volumes. And I think another huge limitation is something that they should have done, even though this is, I guess John Mayer's specs and all that kind of stuff. They should have included reverb. I think having to bring something else to hook it up into the effects loop is just a huge pain. We had the Chicalis Audio Works delay going into the effects loop, and that sounded really, really great. I love that delay pedal. So it's not a huge deal, but it's like you kind of have to prepare to plug everything in like that. For your average gigging musician, I don't know, man. I reckon just a reverb would have been really, really handy, especially for that sort of price. The head's kind of large enough to be able to allow it as well, so I was a little confused that they didn't actually add a delay to the amp, or a reverb, I should say, to the amp. I really feel like that would have been just a huge plus. But anyway, not everyone likes to use reverb, so if you do, you can use a pedal, chuck one into the effects loop like we did much with the delay pedal. But overall, I think the clean channel sounded pretty good. It was pretty musical. It had that 3D kind of sound. I know a lot of people, 50% of people who watch gear videos on YouTube listen through an iPhone. If you listen through an iPhone, wear some good quality headphones. That's the first thing. If you're listening to a podcast, it doesn't matter. But if you're trying to assess audio and its quality, put on some decent headphones if you're listening through, or even those Apple crappy white ones. Listen to them through that so you can sort of just get a sense of what's going on in the room. That's not a criticism of any of the comments, but you need to be able to listen to some of this stuff with at least decent speakers, computer speakers, something with a sub, or some headphones or whatever. It really, really helps you determine how things sound. So to my ear, even listening back to the audio on the clean channel, I loved it. I thought it sounded great. It has a very rolled off high end, so it's going for the 2-rock kind of sound in a way. And we had a chance to compare it to 2 different 2-rocks. That video will be coming up after this video, not the same day, but at some point. We did a shootout between 2 of the other John Mayer amps from 2-rock, or very similar ones to his, or they're based on the John Mayer amps, and the new J-Mod. And I'm not going to spoil that right now, but one of the 2-rocks I felt killed it, and one was very, very inferior to the new J-Mod. So in terms of the clean channel, this is all the subjective thing about music gear. Everything is subjective. That's why you'll see I sometimes add my opinion when I think things don't work properly or they could have improved somewhere. But in terms of tone, everyone likes different things. So that particular type of clean tone, that rolled off high end, sort of enhanced low end to some extent. It's just a big seriatone, dumble-ish kind of sound. They kind of get that right. Is it the nicest clean tone I've ever heard? I don't know. It'd be close. It would be my sort of top 5 amps that I've ever heard personally. Now, I've never heard a Dumble in person, like an actual Dumble amp. I don't think I've ever heard one like in a room where we've plugged in. I don't think I've ever been in that situation, but I've heard a lot of really great amps. The amp that really stands out to me now in terms of clean channel, and this isn't to dismiss the J-Mod, is the Fender Twin George Benson model. Check that out. That clean channel is to die for. I think it sounds great. So overall, the clean channel of the J-Mod is good. It's loud, and it only sounds good once you crank it up. And for a 100 watt amp, that's not always practical. So you want to be the kind of musician that is actually going out there and playing at louder gigs. I think if you're playing at a small pub somewhere, the J-Mod isn't the amp for you. There's no doubt about it. All right, so over to the drive channel. And I should just preface what I'm going to say by this is all of our opinions, basically. This is the same opinion that I think Rick and Ryan both felt about the cleans and about the dirt channel. So what do we feel about the dirt channel? It was pretty bland. I got to say, I reckon my Peavey Studio Pro, or Peavey Bandit actually has a better drive channel than the J-Mod. But you might say, what? How does that even happen? It's all subjective. I didn't like the drive channel on the amp at all. I think it sounded kind of harsh, it sounded kind of bland. No frequencies were jumping out anywhere. It was just like a very sort of weird kind of sound, and that's not my sort of sound. That might be John Mayer's kind of sound, but I didn't like that at all. And Rick and Ryan can absolutely just play beautifully. So it wasn't down to the playing. I tried it as well. Clean channel felt great. I was like, man, this is great. I tried the dirty channel. I was like, that's not very good. But you know what the funny thing is about that amp? And this is what they might have been going for. They went for a fairly generic sort of blandish drive channel. But as soon as you start stacking pedals in it, that's where it lights up. So on its own, I don't think the drive channel will shine. I think most people who use the drive channel on that amp will push it with a pedal. We use the Klon, the Shanks, and the Jan Ray. And all of those three pedals worked great, or the Shanks and I think the Klon were the two that really stood out on the drive channel. So if you're going to be using it without any pedals, that's not the amp either. I really feel like you need pedals to make that drive channel sound good. All in all, it was a really fun experience to go play that amp and sort of just go in with a bit of an open mind, but also at the same time, I think we all expected not to like it as much as we did, especially on the clean channel. That said, its limitations are pretty obvious. You have to have it cranked for it to sound good. And if you're not in a place where you can crank up a 100-watt amp loud, you're probably not going to enjoy it. I got to say, the build quality of it's fantastic. The cab is just really good. Now, I don't even like closed back cabs. That might sort of surprise people who are new to the channel, but I don't personally like the sound of closed back cabs. That was the first closed back cab that I thought really sounded great. So overall, build quality wise is great. The tone's subjective. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you won't. And can you justify the price? That's totally up to you as well. But let me know what you think of it in the comments also. Alright, up next I want to have a quick chat about the Boss Katana Artist and my thoughts about it. I have one sitting right down here right now. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. It is a really great amp. It's extremely functional. I think it wipes the floor from any of the modeling amps I've played up until this point. All of them. I think they got the speaker right, so the speakers just made a massive upgrade to the sound. I love the size of the cabinet. The cabinet size drastically affects tone. For those who don't know, a smaller cabinet will never sound as big as an amp with a bigger box, even if they're the same watts, you know. So the cabinet size is good, the speaker size is great. I'll overlay some photos of this as well. The cool thing about it is you can go from 100 watts to 50 to 0.5 watts. It's a very functional amplifier. Everything you need is on the front. You can, of course, hook it up to a computer and deep dive into it. I haven't found the need, which is pretty rare. Like, I like tinkering with stuff like that. I found the option paralysis pretty high when it came to the Fender Mustang amplifiers. These, I just sort of go, you know what, plug in and I'm good to go, and it sounds great. It's a really great amplifier. I'm seriously considering maybe picking one up at some point and having it as an option to the Bandit. Like, it's got everything that you need on the front panel, so you can dial in delays and a little bit of extra dirt or whatever, and it's just really easy to do that. One of the cool things about the amp is the weight as well. It's not heavy, so it's lighter than my Peavey Bandit. It's slightly larger. My Bandit's in the other room because I used it last night, but it's slightly larger than the Peavey Bandit physically, but it's lighter, so that's a really cool benefit right there. The 0.5 watts sounds fine for just jamming at home at lower volumes. I like its analog approach. There's no LCD screens or the hidden menus you got to dive through and all that kind of stuff. If you want to do that, hook it up to the computer. Like I said, this is the first modeling amp I haven't felt the need to kind of go over to the computer and plug it in and start tweaking with stuff. It just doesn't feel like that kind of amp. One of the cool things I noticed too with this amp is the fact you can kind of dial in a sound, switch channels and go back, and you've got the same sound that you had before you made any changes. So that's kind of cool as well. It makes it more functional in a live sense because you can simply just change the top end on one channel or whatever. If you click over to the dirt channel, then go back to that channel you were on, it's going to be wherever you left it. So that's kind of cool. I reckon that's sort of like that save and forget kind of thing. That makes it more like an actual amplifier than something that you have to have hooked up to the computer. As much as I love the old Katanas, I think they outsound or outtone all of the other digital modeling amps on the market. in terms of the newest generation stuff, like the Marshall codes, wait till I do a review of one of those. The Mustangs and all that kind of stuff, the newest generation of Mustangs. I'm still a huge fan of the older ones, but the new ones just aren't very good. This wipes the floor with all of them, including what I remember about the last generation of Katanas. I think the speaker in this probably just makes that big difference, as well as the functionality. So I'm going to be doing a bit of a deep dive on that video. I haven't been well the last sort of week or so. I haven't been really feeling very good, but I'm getting over that and I feel good now. So I still sound a little husky. I haven't been physically sick like that, but I can hear it in my voice. I'm not quite 100% yet, but I'm getting there. But that said, if you're looking for a modeling amp, or you're looking for a Katana or any of these kind of Mustangs and all that kind of stuff, seriously, go check out the Artist amplifier from Boss. I think this is arguably one of the best amps out there. I'm really on the fence whether or not I pull the trigger on it. I don't really need another solid state amp, but wait till you hear the demo or / review of this. The demo part is at the start when I'm just jamming. It has the best sustain I've ever had without having to hook up a pedal board. It is unbelievable. So I like it. I think I tried it with a Strat, and I've tried it with my Les Paul, I think. Or my Little Crow, sorry. Yeah, with the humbuckers. Man, just wait till you get your hands on one of these things and give them a go. Would I recommend this over just about any other modeling amp on the market? 100%. Go check them out. Nothing wrong, obviously, with the previous generation of the Katanas as well, but I like the fact that I love the design of this. I just think they've got it right. It looks like a classy amp, and it just sounds legit. So definitely check them out. Up next on the podcast, I want to have a chat about something that I was very, very wrong about, and I made assumptions about just being a glorified Fender Mustang, and that I could be quoted saying that, by the way. So I'm wrong. I'm wrong often, but you know, I try to back up my statements in fact most of the time as well. But this was one thing that I got absolutely wrong. So you might remember a while back I was doing a series of videos with Ryan called Shane and Ryan Guitar Mondays. Now I was going through my Blues Deluxe into my 2 notes and recording straight into the sound card that way. Ryan was using a Kemper Profiling amp, and it was modeled off one of his 2 rocks. With some delay and maybe a dirt pedal or something, and it sounded unbelievable, right? We also shot a video that didn't work, unfortunately, because the audio didn't come up right, but we shot a separate video of us profiling the Peavey amp that I've got, the Bandit, just for a joke, and I couldn't hear the difference. It was that good. So I borrowed one, actually. I've got one right here at the moment, and I've got to say, I am extremely impressed by how good this thing is. Do I like the look of this thing? Not really. But I'm going to give you my quick overview of what I like about this. Although it looks extremely complicated, it isn't. I turned it on and I could work out what I was doing in a matter of moments, just in terms of using the presets that are already in here. I really like that feature about it. The reason I'm thinking about something like this, or I've borrowed it, is because basically now if I demo guitars, I'm going to have an unlimited palette or whatever of amps I can choose from, as opposed to just using the ones I've got, and they're referenced off actual amplifiers. They're not sort of like digital representations of them, and it just sounds really musical. So the video that I post coming up of, I think, the Squier Classic Vibe, that should be coming up soon. I did a video on the Squier Classic Vibe 50s Strat, which is one that I've never tried or demoed up until this one. I used this, and I was able to pull out some sounds that you've never heard on the channel, which was awesome. So in terms of a home studio thing or a studio piece of gear, I think this is great. I don't know if I would take this to a gig. There's a couple of reasons. It's got a 600 watt output on the back, so you're gonna have to have a speaker box that can kind of handle that amount of volume. I've heard these live, and just straight through a speaker box or whatever, I don't really think they sound that great. They don't sound like the amp would. But going straight into the PA system with the XLR outs on the back, it sounds phenomenal. So that's where these things shine, in my opinion. They shine at sort of replicating the sound of an amp that you already have, and then being able to sort of use that any volumes thanks to the XLR out straight into the desk. I think that's really, really cool. One of the huge limitations though of this is you need to buy an external foot switch. It would have been good if they just sort of included that stuff, especially based on the price of these. I think the price is kind of justified based on, you know, they're built well. They're made in Germany, I think. Are they made in Germany? I could be wrong about that. If I'm wrong about that, I'll post it on screen. But overall, I was really wrong about how these things sound. Now, to put it into context, I like the sound of this more than I like the sound of my Blues Deluxe in my 2-notes at that particular time. I've since dialed in my 2-notes a little bit better. I might do a video sort of comparing the two, just so you can sort of get a sense of how they sound. Overall, this is going to make recording guitar videos extremely easy. So this isn't mine, I've borrowed this. I've got it for a little while, so I'm going to try and sort of see how much I can get, how much value I can get out of it before there's any decisions on it. But overall, I gotta say, I don't think this is for everybody, but I think if you're doing stuff like what I do, or you're a home studio guy where you record albums like I do, or you record albums for other people, or if you want something you can just plug straight into a PA system at a gig, this is a really good choice. Given if you're going to be playing live, you're going to really need the foot switch that comes with it, or that doesn't come with it, but you have to buy it as an option. Does it take pedals well? No. If you're going to be plugging in it like your favorite Klon Centaur or whatever into this, it doesn't work well. I've heard it live firsthand. It sounds nothing like how the amp would respond with an actual analog pedal, but it's not really trying to do that. You could profile your amp and pedal to get that kind of sound, but overall, I'm pretty impressed, and I was really wrong. I kind of assumed these were just not going to be any better than a lot of the digital modeling technology that's out already. And with maybe the exception of the Boss Artist, this would be, you know, top of the list of just functional units to do something very, very specific. Now, my friend Ryan, who is a great guitar player, he also bought recently a whole lot of acoustic pedals, all that kind of stuff, because he's doing acoustic gigs. He said he profiled his signal chain into his Kemper and plugged his acoustic guitar into the Kemper into the PA, and it sounded exactly the same. So it kind of rendered all of his new signal chain obsolete. I guess he's probably got a little bit more creative control with the actual pedals, but that said, once you get a sound that you like, say a compressor, a bit of delay, whatever, hall reverb, whatever you choose to use for your acoustic guitar, you can actually model that signal chain, or profile it, I should say, or whatever. And yeah, and he said it's so similar that it's like, well, what does he do with all of his other stuff? I said, well, you might as well sell it, you know. And I've seen guys use this for bass as well. You can profile all your favorite bass amps and all that kind of stuff as well. And being that it's a 600 watt head, you can just absolutely use it as a bass amp as well. I think it's a pretty wild unit. Things made out of steel or aluminium or aluminum, and that's the back of the amp right there. It looks pretty confusing, but I've been around studio gear for years, so for me this isn't that complicated. I kind of understand what everything does and how it works. So we're going to profile a couple of my amps coming up and sort of see how it sounds, and then we might do a blind A/B test and see if you can actually hear any difference between them. I think that'll be a cool test. Overall, I'm impressed. Is this for everybody? Absolutely not. But if you like me and you record albums, or you record albums for other people, or if you make videos and you want, you know, all the sounds under the sun, this is a really great direct recording tool. I would kind of almost put this at the top of my list for stuff like that. As of right now, there's things that I love about the 2-notes that this doesn't do as well, but we'll get into that on another video. But overall, yeah, what can I say? I was wrong. I really was wrong. So sticking with the digital modeling conversation that we're just having about the Kemper, I thought I'd also include in this conversation the Line 6 Helix. Now, you might remember Telecaster Tuesdays that I did with Rick, as well as some of my videos as well, but we didn't tell you what amp we were playing because we thought we'd just let people decide if they liked the sound. The amp used on all of those wasn't an amp. It was a Line 6 Helix. It was that pedal board sort of deal that they've released. It's got amp sim and pedal sim and all that kind of stuff in it. It actually sounds really good, but the thing about it that's really quite cool is it feels good to play. I had a chance to play it live twice now, straight into a PA system, so no amplifier. You can click on the tube screamer and a Klon. I think that's what Rick had profiled in there. And it felt really, really good. There's something a bit strange initially about playing through front of house speakers or a foldback, you know, having your guitar sort of come back and hit you in the face. But that said, overall, I'm pretty impressed with the Helix. I think it's a good unit for what it does. It sounds very, very legit. So I think the patch that we had made, like I mentioned, was a clon, a tube screamer, and a deluxe reverb, and some delay pedal. I'm not exactly sure which one he chose, but overall the tones on those videos came up great. And we just direct out the Helix straight into my audio interface, and we're listening to it back through studio monitors. And I was like, far out, this thing sounds good, and it sounds analog. It sounds like it should. It sounds like if you were to mic up that amp, that's what you're gonna get. And that's pretty rare in terms of once you start stacking stuff on top of, you know, patches and all that. So the Line 6 Helix, I've never really been the biggest Line 6 fan. I kind of like their M13 that they had a few years ago. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I like some Line 6 stuff. I like their audio interfaces. I've had 3 of them over the years. I've had 2 UX2s, and I had a UX8, which was arguably my favorite 8-channel sound card of all time. I think that thing was awesome. They discontinued it for whatever reason. But that said, the Helix is good. If you're looking for something that you can plug direct to a PA system or play at home or whatever, it's a really, really good option. If you're going to be tracking guitars on an album, it's also a really good option. It's kind of like what the Kemper does, except it's more functional in terms of a floor unit. I know Fender released that Mustang floor unit, which was kind of the same concept in many ways. You could sort of just have everything in that little floor model, which was functional with your feet. But the Helix is on a whole different level sound-wise and price-wise as well. They are expensive. I'm not sure I would go out and buy one, but Dr. Rick owns one, and he was the last guy I thought that would buy one, and he loves it. He's used it direct into the PA for cover band gigs and all that kind of stuff. He's taken it to the jam nights, which is where I've had a chance to play it as well. And overall, I think it sounds pretty good. Just to put it into some sort of context, I've heard him use that at the jam now a few times, and a couple of weeks back he took up his Fender Mustang GT200. There's no comparison in the sound. One sounds like an amp, one sounds like an amp in the next room. So yeah, it doesn't really, the Fender Mustang GT doesn't really cut it in a live mix. It's loud, but it's a different sort of sound. The Helix kind of sounds like an amp that's mic'd up coming through the PA speakers. You know, like it's loud and it feels good to listen to. I'm not to belittle the Mustang GTs any more than I have over the years, but you know, I don't think the GT200s hold a candle to any of the tones I'm hearing through the Kemper, you know, or any of these other options, especially the Line 6 Helix as well. So coming up, if I can, I'm gonna either ask Rick to come over or go to his place and we'll do a full review of his actual setup, and we'll see how it sounds and then let you sort of decide what you think. But, you know, the reason we didn't say what amp we were plugged into was because I thought it sounded great. Rick thought it sounded great. And I was just like, I don't think people will be able to actually tell that this isn't an actual amp and pedal. Because everyone's like, oh, what pedal's that? You know, and it was the clon, and it was also a tube screamer. That they were the profiles that we selected for, or Rick selected to use for those videos. And that said, I was like, this sounds like that particular rig, because I played that particular rig for ages. I had a tube screamer, a clon, and a deluxe reverb for a long time, and that's how it sounded mic'd up. But it was just easy to use, so we're like, let's just use that. Done. So yeah, overall, I'm pretty impressed with the sound. Functionality-wise, that's something that I need to sort of dive into, but you know, Rick, one of the smartest guys in the world, not maybe the most technology savvy guys out there, and he'll admit to that as well. So Rick, if you're watching this, that's no criticism of your insanely huge intellect, but yeah, he can work it fine. So I think functionality wise, it's pretty good too, but I'll confirm that once I get my hands on it, or we do a review together of it coming up. So overall, I think it sounds great. Technology now is getting to a point where it's actually functional and it sounds good, and they're getting a lot of things right, and that's been the problem with some modeling technology. There's either too many options, or you have to endlessly tweak to try to get it to sound good. Stuff that you can just plug into and it sounds good right away is good. I don't care what it is. So just a few things that are coming up on the In The Blues channel. So I still have some Guitar Search Saturdays coming up. I have one in editing that I try to get ready for the Saturday that has just gone, but I wasn't really feeling up to sort of finishing much or doing anything. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to leave that till the following week. I've got one coming up from the Guitar Emporium in Melbourne, which will be the following one after the next week's one. Wait till you see this shop. Unbelievable. I would put that in like top 3, top 5 shops in the world that I've ever seen. It is really, really cool. So if you like a lot of used gear, this is the place, man. If you live in Melbourne, it is unbelievable. You can check out their website. And thanks for the shirt, by the way, Darren. It's awesome. Perfect fit. But that said, I got a couple of more Guitar Search Saturdays coming up, and then I need to film some more. So I'm hopefully going to be able to line up a few more of those coming up. And they'll be in shops that I'm not familiar with. And now that, you know, shops are sort of encouraging me to come in and do stuff for them, or not for them, but for the channel and vice versa, it's really cool. So I just sent them an email. I'm like, I got my good camera equipment. I'm coming in. And they're like, yeah, no worries. Or they say no, one or the other. But either way, I should be able to get a whole lot more of these done coming up. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is the giveaway coming up on the channel as well. I'll post a proper video of this, but I thought what I would do and test the waters with you guys as well, rather than just changing the posters, because I changed them up quite a bit. I've got now the Creature from the Black Lagoon one, the King of the Hill, what else is down here? Zombie. So I'm starting to get some random ones on the actual wall back here, but I like to change them up whenever. And I don't think that's a really, you know, interesting or creative way musically to win something. So what I was thinking, now, you know, I use a lot of background music on my channel. I use just me noodling with a delay pedal or something as background music when I talk, or I actually use like stuff I've created in GarageBand or royalty-free music as some of the music that you hear on Guitar Search Saturday. So, you know, I use a lot of background music just low in the mix. But what I was thinking, and this is just an idea, is to have 2 separate giveaways, like a boutique pedal here and a less expensive one here. So if you're limited to just recording like one guitar part and you want to try to make something that I might use on either Guitar Search Saturday or on my videos just as I chat, even at the start of the podcast, little bits of music like that, then that might be the actual idea. So maybe just create a minute or 2 of music, something that I might be able to use on the channel. If I use it, you get a free pedal. I was thinking of just, rather than just making it about stuff, like something changing, maybe make it about music, because that's why we're all here anyway. We all love playing music, even if, depending on where we're at musically, it doesn't really matter, because that kind of background music stuff can be made many, many different ways. And even if you've just got a phone, you know, you can put it in front of your amp and record that way. So there's ways you can do it. I know not everyone's technically sort of gifted when it comes to recording and all that kind of stuff, but there's many, many different ways you can kind of make music these days. And I think a lot of the people that watch the channel would have some sense about how to do it. I know there obviously will be people that have never done it, but I thought that might be a kind of fun and creative way to have something that you've done on the channel as part of the giveaway, and then you get something in return. So let me know your thoughts on that. It's just something a little bit different. I'm in the process now of actually using GarageBand and learning it to replace a lot of the background music I'm using on my Guitar Search Saturdays, and it's coming up pretty well so far. I've got 2.5 tracks kind of finished, maybe a 3rd one, and I'm trying to capture a particular mood, but with the music that I use in the background of when I talk, it just has to be something that doesn't really sound like it's too in your face or whatever. So any ambient kind of stuff sounds good. Just, you know, however you want it to sound or you think might sound good, give it a go. Now, if you're not sure what I mean, just go watch any of my demos. Every time I talk at the start or the end of the video, there's always one of 3 or 4 different background pieces of music that I recorded at the back. So I was thinking, maybe it's time for a change, and I'm sure there's people out there that could make a much better piece of, you know, music or sound than what I can. So that might be part of the giveaway this year. Let me know what you think. That's sort of still up in the air. I thought that might keep it kind of fair, because it doesn't really matter what you play or how it sounds. If it's something usable that I can use on the channel and I like it, then you've won a pedal. So that might be part of the giveaway. And that wraps up the In the Blues Tone podcast for February 19th, 2018. I almost said 17 again. Why am I doing that? Come on, brain. It's next year already. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you do, please give it the thumbs up. If you didn't, please give it the thumbs down. Any feedback is good feedback. I always appreciate constructive feedback on the channel. That's always cool. I plan on doing one of these podcasts every month coming up, as well as I think next week or the week after, I have a week of different content coming up. That's the plan. So I've been doing a lot of gear demos. I've been doing daily content again, which is crazy. I've had a couple of days off in between there, but I'm going to do a full week of different videos coming up. I don't want it just to be gear-based all the time. And some of it might be gear-based, but it'd be like a live situation sort of video as well. So that's kind of cool, and we'll try and add in more of that coming up. So yeah, that's the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or questions about anything in it, please let me know. If you want to find out more about any of the stuff that I've spoken about, I generally will have demos on the way or coming up. So just hang in there. If you're not already subscribed, click the bell. You'll get notifications when those videos go live. I plan on doing a live video pretty soon as well on YouTube. Like I said, I haven't been feeling too great the last week and a half or so. And I didn't really feel like I was up to doing it, but I'm back on board. I feel good. Look at my beard. What do you reckon? This is two weeks worth. I'm going for the caveman look this year. I thought, you know what? I got a shaved head. It's a shame I can't just go put all of that there. And then anyway, that's a story for another time. But anyway, folks, that wraps it up. Don't forget you can listen to the podcast on iTunes or at inthebluespodcast.com. It's free on both. You don't have to sign up or anything. Just hit play and it's ready to go. But YouTube videos are up in its entirety as well. Hope you like the frame rate of this video as well. I love this new camera. It's awesome. Thanks again, guys. Rock on and catch you soon. See ya.